Yes, you can go to the restroom. Good afternoon, class, or good morning. It's good to see all of you here. Raise your hands as always. Remember Rule 1, don't talk while the teacher's talking. Rule 2, keep your hands and feet to yourself. Rule 3, be respectful. Have some candy. Good job, everybody. Today's lesson, all seriousness, is we're talking about King Saul. And we talked last week about King Saul, of how at first, when he started out, he was loyal, he was good, he was humble, and the people of Israel were really blessed. Saul was chosen by God to be Israel's king because he had a humble and a meek heart. And if you want to read this story, it can be found in 1 Samuel 15, 1 through 35. Meekness doesn't need to be mixed up with being timid or being real fearful. Moses was very meek, but he was also a really strong leader. Think of all the things that he got to do for the people of Israel with God's power. Meekness is actually the willingness to accept God's authority. In the beginning, Saul understood that his blessings were from God and they weren't from his own abilities. See, God gave him blessings. And we all know we like candy. Candy can very much be a blessing in our lives. And with that, when Saul took the blessings, he was then able to bless others. Of course, God don't ever shut his blessings out on us. But Saul, as long as he was trusting God, he was receiving those and therefore could give it to his own people. God gives us abilities. He gives us all kinds of talents, all kinds of thoughts and ideas. It all's his. But we got to remember where they come from. They're not our strength. They're God's. Kind of on loan. When the people of Israel began to admire Saul, though, like a lot of people, he forgot his relationship with God. The people loved Saul because his leadership brought him blessings. Not so much candy, but it brought him blessings. It was really God who blessed them, though, right? It wasn't Saul, it was God. He became then more concerned with pleasing people than pleasing God. And because Saul then cared more about pleasing the people than he did God, his supply from God was then cut off. It was gone at that point. A good leader must not allow anyone to get in between him and God. They can't put people in front of God. And because eventually you're going to run out of those blessings. If you don't rely on God, our source is going to run out. God is our source. He don't run out. These things aren't taped on very well, are they? Doesn't matter. He became more concerned with the people than he did with God. The best thing a leader can do for his people is to love God first. Put God before everything else. Leaders who seek only to please people become afraid of people. Saul was afraid of losing his followers when Samuel did not come to the sacrifice. Saul was more afraid of the people than he was of God. At that point, Saul lost respect for God, and eventually, he lost his kingdom. Eventually, he even lost his life. By caring more about pleasing people than pleasing God, Saul lost everything. Saul offered sacrifices as a priest. That was a big no-no. He wasn't supposed to do that. He broke the rules. He broke the laws. And God's priests were a special group of people chosen by God. And so, as soon as Saul offered those sacrifices, Samuel arrived and rebuked him because Saul was showing absolutely no respect for God. Saul showed that he would steal from God when he was under pressure. Samuel told Saul that he would lose his kingdom because he did not obey. In God's eyes, nothing takes the place of obedience. In life, we're always better following God than in simply making just big sacrifices just because we cut a big paycheck, just because we give away something. God requires obedience, not sacrifice. We have a choice today to obey God rather than man. God's not pleased with gifts and sacrifices alone. He wants and deserves our obedience. This week, and really forever, keep that in mind. Doesn't matter what you can give, it's how well you can obey. A good leader is a much better servant. Y'all have a good week this week.